is that business ownership is about risk tolerance, trying stuff. Okay, it's scary. I've never done this before, but I'm going to jump in and see what happens. Followed with a lot of kindness to yourself. Like, hey, yeah, what did I learn? What worked well? What didn't? What can I do better next time?
You're listening to Mentor Moments, where we talk about all things counseling, technology, education, and career development. I am Braden Wooters, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Michael Keener. Grab a seat, and let's get started. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Mentor Moments. I am Braden Wooters.
And I am Michael Keener, and let's jump right in, right, Braden?
So today, on today's episode, we have a very special guest, Angela Skurtu. Angela is a licensed marriage therapist and a certified sex therapist. She's a keynote speaker as well as the author of 3 books. Her most recent book is From F No to F Yes Sex. She is also the host of the Open Bedroom Doors show, Real Talk for Real Relationships, and that is available on her YouTube channel and most podcasting platforms. Angela has such an interesting, niche and way that she kind of practices as a therapist, and I definitely wanted Angela on the show just to learn more about her. I guess not a very formal first question, but what do we need to know about you other than the stuff that I just already said?
Oh, there's so much. Well, I can tell you cool things that are going on the show right now. Just built a kitchen and I am going to do some episodes. So I have a section of my show called Sex Positions where I judge something in the media about different sexual content. But since we have a kitchen, I can get cooks on the show. So I'm going to do a whole segment of Sex in the Kitchen in my show of just chefs coming in to cook, or I've got a pelvic floor physical therapist who's coming in, but we're gonna show how you can practically apply some of her skills in the kitchen. Because one of the things I think when it comes to sex and sexual health and wellness for people is there's a lot of ways that people kind of put it in a corner and separate it from daily life. And really what I'm trying to do with the show and with all the content is to normalize it. No, this can be, you can show affection in your kitchen. Here's a way to be romantic and playful. So that's just something really cool and exciting that I found out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use that kitchen like there's no tomorrow.
Oh, that's so interesting. So that gives us, I think, a snapshot of kind of where you're at today, I suppose, of how we got here. I guess our first question is just kind of how did you get to where you are now? Take us through kind of those first the beginnings and kind of what brought you to the career that you have today, where you're getting kitchen settings and such.
Sure. So way back in the day, I'm as X Zennial, right in the middle between Gen X and Millennial. And so I graduated college, bachelor's 2007, but at that time I was trying to figure out what I want to do, who am I? We all have the who am I phase. And there was this nurse on TV, Talk Sex with Sue Johansson, and she would answer viewer questions about sex, and then she would also test toys, sex toys, and give them burkettes, this toy gets 5 burkettes or 4, which were these little fire. She was the first emoji user to my knowledge. And so she would give them these this is how hot it is. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally want to do that. That would be hilarious. And so that in college gave me the idea of, okay, I need to go to grad school. And I learned that, first you get licensed as a mental health professional of some sort, and then you go get your certification. So I thought the easiest, so I knew I wanted to do sex therapy, but I had to figure out, I had to almost reverse engineer it, right? So I was like, okay, well, marriage therapy makes sense then, because usually when there's trouble, there's more than one of you having sex. And then that started the path.
I see Brayton thinking, but I'm going to
No,
jump
go
in.
for it. You're in.
Or one of our, we like starting with this early question because we sort of started with a lot of bit of about career development as well. So we appreciate you giving us that foundation. And one of the themes that or maybe it's one of my themes that I talk a lot about is this concept of planned happenstance, that we sort of have a plan for our life and then these moments just hit. And again, you were sort of that classic example of, okay, I'm going through school, but then you come in contact with this show and it just sort of gave you that moment and passion, and you took off for that. So anytime I hear planned happenstance, I love to sort of shout that out a little bit. because so many of us, I know I have a good friend, like he knew he wanted to be an accountant, went to school to become an accountant, graduated on time, and has been an accountant for 30 years now. But that usually doesn't happen for the most of us. So just finding these journeys is helpful for our listeners.
I absolutely have that for my podcast journey, right? So I didn't come in expecting to do what I'm doing in terms of the media creation, right? I started thinking as a sex therapist and I knew like my goal was to do private practice. And I from the start of that like talk sex with Sue Johansson to grad school to certification, I was like, will be in private practice, will be in private practice. Then I hit, I got into private practice and built my own business in 2012. But it was interesting. Once it happened, then I was like, well, now what? Right. I mean, I did it, but I am a little bit one of those people who can get bored and I need other things to be kind of excited about. So for your happenstance story, my first podcasting experience was actually with 106.5 The Arch with Spencer Graves. I don't know if you remember him back in 2017. And this was back when nobody was doing podcasts. And he was like, yeah, this would be fun. We should do a sex therapy podcast. And I was like, okay, yeah, why not? I'd never done it, never thought I would. But so he and I made about 8 episodes, and I don't even think 106.5 knew what podcasts were. Like, they were like, "All right, I guess they're doing," but they didn't, like, do any oversight. And then here's what happened. So on 7th episode, I decided, "You know what? Let's do Lucky 7. We're gonna talk about anal sex. Why not?" Because, of course, like, I feel that's lucky, you know? And this 106.5 had not listened to any of these podcast episodes, and that most wanted they listened to as my episode, and they shut me down. Like, we can't have this associated with our station. And oh my gosh, I was so hurt. Because I didn't it was one of those, like, I didn't know I love this situations until, like, it was taken. Like, it was over, they weren't gonna do it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that meant something to me." And I just, like, kind of weird. So I feel like I fell into that relationship. And from then that ignited the passion where it's like, I have to do this and I have to continue to do this for as long as possible. And I haven't looked back since. Like I did into podcasts, YouTube, like I love media content. And I didn't realize that was going to be something I cared so much about.
And so I guess my question is, because media production in the therapy space, I feel like is a newer part of the business. Like, did you have anybody that you kind of like modeled off of, or has it been just a lot of like testing and learning and figuring it out kind of yourself?
Great question. I would say it was so after I lost that gig, I was really sad. And my husband at the time was like, Angel, anybody can do a podcast. Let's just make one in our base. And so that's what we started after that, making just like kind of like, you do in your office. We made a podcast in our basement. And I've always networked in business. Like I would say that's a hallmark of my business success is my networking. And so I had plenty of people I could interview and luckily trust to come into my basement because, I mean, it's like, where are we going? It's just my house. We're just going downstairs. Come down here. Oh, we'll let you free. But yeah, so I learned as I went, and me and my husband at the time worked on it together. He helped me with some of the back end. Now that husband I did divorce, so after that, then I had to learn again. Like I ended up joining. There's a studio. What was it? There's another studio that I joined for a while that's downtown that I will remember in 5 minutes. Oh, Shock City Studio. I started to like. I had to learn a lot as I went. And what's interesting to continue that conversation is I'm still learning to this day. Like now I'm learning how to incorporate social media and like blast everything across the platforms because now like podcasting is its own business of like, oh, you've got to like create these reels and you put it out on different platforms and you're collaborating. Like when you guys send me your stuff, we're going to collaborate everywhere on Facebook and Insta to grow our audiences. The whole marketing thing now that I wasn't. So it's all been just like learn as you go for me. What about you guys? How did you I mean, you mentioned that you told me before, but like, are you guys learning as you go or did you have any sort of like intro to that?
Dr. Keto, go ahead.
Really, it's as simple as I guess it was two prongs. I wanted to do it for a learning opportunity. So how can we incorporate this into the classroom? I guess I had been listening to podcasts and whatnot, and how can we tell a story? To me, we started also with interviewing graduates. So it was a way for me to reach back to the graduate to stay connected, and then maybe even connect some mentoring opportunities with the current students and our graduates. And then the third, and maybe this was the I don't know I don't know if it was the biggest one, but if there was an economic model, I was trying to do things to help promote our program to show, hey, if you're a new student, hey, look at some of the cool things that the program does, and they can be involved in. So, um, marketing, learning opportunity, and connecting graduates with current students.
I think the only thing that I'd also add to that is just the structure of the way that we kind of do things. Like just recently, we've been doing a lot of just Dr. Keener and I talking, but I think a lot of the way that we work is just as people, I think is really elevating other people. That's just like a skill that I think that we have as maybe clinicians or just as people is like, okay, less on us. Let's elevate the cool people that we know. And so that was a big, I think, driving force for us was like, we're not gonna be like the stars of the show, of course, we're gonna, chat and have our witty banter. But a lot of this is just gonna be, hey, look at how awesome everyone else is around us. Can we get a spotlight on them? And so that was a big draw for me as well. So I don't know if any of that resonates with you, Angela, or not, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely in a field where there's just so sex therapy, there's only 5,000 of us in the country, right? And so it's a small enough niche in the therapy world that you can be pretty well known pretty quickly if you get out there and speak and get your name out there, at least in my niche, right? But like it's big enough too to be recognized. And so I actually genuinely love sex therapy in my field because I do know like big names. Like just in the last conference, I was able to interview like Caitlin V, who has a show, and she was just hanging around the conference. And I was like, oh my God, it's you. I don't know. They're interesting people at these places. So I think it is really cool to be on both sides, to be able to interview people and like showcase all these amazing people and all their cool stories that they're doing. But then I will say I'm a little bit of my own like starlit person too. I love to be in the spotlight and I don't know. I just have a weird personality, so it's fun to be on camera.
Uh, that's something that I remember. I think I saw a TikTok about it. It was like if you need to build one skill, it's to get comfortable in front of a camera. And I wonder if that was a skill that like you just initially had. You're like, yeah, this is easy. I can do this automatically. Or if that was just something like a skill that you had to grow of like, okay, I'm just talking. There's nobody in the room. I'm just talking to a camera.
Well, I will say I talk to myself all the time.
That's helpful.
I am an old theater kid way back before any of the therapy. I was like always the campy, goofy characters in musicals. Like I was Fruma Sarah in Fiddler of the Roof, the big witch that's like, oh, like that was one of my characters. And Eulalie McKechnie. I was and what's funny, it's going back in high school. I used to so I don't know if you guys have your nemesises from high school, but I had a nemesis because of course I wanted the lead and Julie would always get the lead every time. And I could not hear this at the time. But I had people saying to me, adults who were seasoned and trying to impart wisdom to me, like, Angela, your roles are the memorable roles. They're fun, they're interesting. No, they're not like the superstar, but they're like everybody remembers what weird shit you're doing here, right? Oh, sorry if you need to dub that out or something, but I couldn't get it at the time because to me it was always about like, how come I can never be whiny, whiny high school kid energy. And now I'm like, it was all like that campy weirdness is perfect for what I do because like sex is one of those topics that's difficult and taboo for people. So like even in therapy, my ability to joke with people and be playful, it like helps clear the air. It helps them be like, okay, I can talk to her. Like even in my office, I would have to leave to show you, but I have like BDSM bears and like puppets of a this and a vulva because why not? That's gonna be here. And that goofiness has helped a lot of people just feel like, okay, we can talk to her. It's just sex.
Mhm. Gosh, and I appreciate that, and I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions. My brain is spinning. A big theme that we chat about a lot is, especially in the world of rehab counseling, is like disability and inclusion, and how that seems to be a big staple for you is inclusion, and in my brain, I never for some reason, I never think of, like, inclusion being there like, the sexual piece to it too, and so I'm wondering, and maybe we'll get to it later, but, like, if you've ever tackled that topic of, like, disability and sex and, layers of the taboo on top of each other and all that, so
Absolutely. So I just did a really cool segment. It's not out yet, but I partnered with Mattress Dogs and they gave me a bed to do some of my sex positions on. And my whole focus was sex during pregnancy. So, like, how to adjust sex when you're a third trimester, sex with knee pain, sex with back pain. So, like, physical pain issues. And actually, one of my first talks I was ever asked to do was sex and kidney disease, actually. Like, right out the gate, because, like, when you're again, when you're a certified sex therapist, there's not many of you. So, like, if the Kidney Foundation contacts you, you might be the only person who can talk about the topic. And so, absolutely, there's my work is I'm really trying to normalize sex across the field. Like, right now, I'm working with the Cancer Support Society on creating an intimacy and cancer talk. And if I have my way, I will do a set like some segments about cancer and intimacy because again, like all of these illnesses, disabilities, people are still wanting to be intimate and connect through these things. But when we don't talk about it, people feel like there's something wrong with them or alone. They're alone. And I want everyone to know you're not alone. Actually, every sex is universal. And when you go through problems, problems are a part of life, but couples and individuals who can talk comfortably about sex with each other are going to be able to navigate through those issues. We're really doing a travesty and a disservice in our society by not making sex a comfortable and casual conversation.
should you, Dr. Keenan? Yeah, what are you thinking?
I guess I'm couching it in two things. Obviously, we need to scope work within our scope of practice. So my question is couched in that. So if there was, a counselor that maybe wanted to get certified, so there's that route, but like where would you say, or is there tips for somebody to be comfortable talking about sex with their client, but again within staying within their scope of practice and then knowing when to sort of refer. I don't know. There's sort of a two-pronged question there. Does that
Yeah, I hear two questions. To answer the first one, if you want to get certified, you do have to go through asect.org. They have made it more like there are schools now that have made it way easier to get your certification. I am currently a supervisor for SHA, the Sexual Health Alliance. It's all online. You can do it while you're working. There's the classroom stuff and group and individual supervision. Now, of course, I'm biased. So for those of you who are like, well, of course you like it, Angela, there's also IC, which is another streamlined school. And again, it's another one that's online, or you can go to asec.org and look for some of their schools. But those would be the top two that I appreciate. I'm not necessarily a worker for IC, but I know their leader. I just like the work that she's doing. Um, and then I really do encourage people to get certified, especially if you're doing couples work, because I tell you, as soon as I started telling people right in the certification process, I would tell everybody, hey, so I'm working on becoming a certified sex therapist. So if you have anything you want to talk about, just so you know, it's an open door. Like I'm learning, so I would always let people know I wasn't certified yet, but I'm learning and I am a person that you can talk to about this. And so that can segue into the answer to the second question too, by the way. That 90% of people would take me up on that offer. Even people who they weren't there for sex therapy. They were there for parenting issues. They were there for like I was working in families for children and families, right? So young kids and teens and their families, but like people would ask me about stuff going on in their lives. They'd ask me, how do I talk to my kids about sex? When do you have this conversation? What do I do with electronics? So I just want all therapists listening to hear 90% of the time it was used. And then to answer that second question more firmly, you can talk about, I mean, sex itself is still a part of life, just like you need to talk to people about finances if they're struggling with their finances. You got to talk to people about illness, cancer. Like cancer is also like you're not going to be the difference is you're not the cancer treatment person, right? So like you might not tell them, hey, you need to do this radiation treatment or this. You would send them to a cancer doctor for their actual radiation treatment. But like you would still, as a therapist, talk to them about their experience with cancer, grief around cancer, things they're going through, how cancer is impacting their relationships, right? So sex you would still I would use this as the same metaphor. You can still talk about like how is sex showing up? What are you struggling with? Like, your basic conversational stuff of like, how are you talking to each other about this? Do you struggle with this? Now, if there's a specific prescribed problem like erectile dysfunction, orgasmic dysfunction, like there's look in the DSM for the sexual dysfunctions. Those are the ones that are more specific to us sex therapists. And if it feels like as you're talking about sex, you feel like the treatment would require more than you're capable of, then of course, then that would be the time to refer out. But I just also really want to encourage everybody to get more training in that area because we need it and our culture needs it.
And I'm thankful that you're bringing that up because that is something that I mean, so I had been working at Youth in Need for 2 years, so just working primarily with kids and teenagers, and just how much, sex was a topic that came up, and of course, like, in my brain, I'm like, "That will never come up, surely I'll just focus on these other things," and then kinda exactly what you said, which is, it's always showing up. And we would run into these kinds of, I wouldn't call them issues, but these maybe dilemmas of, well, do we have the consents with the parents to talk about X, Y, Z? And then, our supervisors kept coming, do we need to update our consents to talk about X, Y, Z? Like, we have HIV there, like, but what if they have questions about pregnancy and all these other things? Like, are we allowed as a therapist to do those things? And so just exactly what you're describing, we would run into all of these like places of like, okay, we weren't expecting that we'd talk about this, but here we are, and we don't know how to answer that. Or, for instance, I would have parents come up to me and say, "Hey, we want to have the sex talk with our kid. How should we do that?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, I don't. My scope of practice is only so far." So I resonate with what you're sharing. I'm like, yeah, there's definitely some gaps in the knowledge and the skills of those pieces. So
Well, I can tell you a story that I will keep high level because it's a real story. The way therapists tell stories. So, in the foster care community in St. Louis, Missouri, and then our state, there are some pretty serious limits on whether or not we can talk to foster kids about sex. But, like, I just want you to know, like, there was even like a recent in the last month situation where a kiddo was sending nudes across the phone to another kiddo. And if you don't know much about the legal situation around that, that's distribution, right? Like, so to me, it is mind-boggling that we have some legal, like in the foster system, legal issues around you're not supposed to, as a foster parent, talk to your kids about sex, and yet things are happening. Like people are like putting themselves out, like, we need to be able to talk about this stuff. And so, to your point, I think there's a difference between sex therapy and sex education, and our whole society has a gap in sex education. To me, this is technology education, right? Like once your body is out there in the void, you don't have control over your image anymore, and you don't have control over where it's going. And so to me, sex education is bodies, boundaries, puberty, technology education, harm reduction, thinking about bigger, the grand scheme of like, how do you not only protect yourself, but how do you advocate for yourself in different situations? So it's communication. And think of all the things like if you're putting it in those like smaller pieces, how much of your day-to-day life as a therapist is doing any of those things like all the time, right?
Doctor, do
We
you hear anything?
we talked a few episodes on artificial intelligence and sort of the pros and cons and ethical responsibilities and how do we introduce it. We know students may cheat with it, but and so and again, and you said the word harm reduction, and so when I was thinking about working with AI with in my classes with my students, I want to come from benefit promotion. So again, just being proactive, in other words, about it. And to me, again, that's what I heard you saying in reality, right? It's here.
Hmm.
Let's address it appropriately, and
And since we're talking about this, I'm sorry, Mike, because now you mentioned AI, and my brain goes to the amount of clients that I had or clients that knew of their friends that had like AI girlfriends, and yeah. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, Angela.
I just did a sex position segment about this guy. So I watched the Jubal show, or listen, it's a radio show, but I listened to the Jubal show, and they have this segment called "To Catch a Cheater." and where they send flowers to like they call up the person they think is cheating and they say you want flowers and they see who they send it to. And this girlfriend had her, husband set up and he sent them to her. And so she's like, "Well, what's going on? You're spending all this time on the phone." And he was talking with Luna, an AI expert, and he was like, actually, he was going through something, but he was basically using Luna as a type of therapist to figure out like his problems. But to me, like put both of your pieces together there, I don't, I think it's worth it to understand and use AI and try and figure out how it works. But like we have to like also think of like this is a situation where this man's wife thought he was cheating on her because he couldn't just talk to her. So like these AI bots and girlfriends are only going to go so far, and you still have the conversation. And so it's funny because even as a therapist you could think, oh my gosh, they're going to take our job, and it's like, well, maybe, but then there's still the place where now my partner is like concerned about me cheating with Luna instead of being with them, and you still have to have sex with each other or have a relationship with each other. So I think it will be a lot of like, okay, accept this. This is a part of life. Now, how do we work with what we've got and do some harm reduction? Use it as kind of like an enhancement, but like it can't be a replacement.
I would agree with what you're sharing. I'm gonna pivot to more about you. I'm curious for one about like what an average day looks like for you, like being in the role that you're in. And that might be hard to answer given how like many hats you might wear. And I guess a follow up question to that would be, a big piece, it sounds like, to your role right now has been a lot of content creation. And I'm curious of what the return on investment has been on that. If you've seen it really impact your practice as much as you anticipated, less than you anticipated, if it's almost like a necessity now to your practice, of like what I'll stop there with the question, but
Yeah, those are good business questions. Very important. So, let's start with the first one. A typical day is a mix. It can be like I was thinking of what did I do today? Because all right, so yeah, like some of today was therapy. I still have to see clients. So like most of my financial bread and butter is still seeing clients, one on one, couples or individuals. And then part of today though was doing some discussion with my producers on editing. Like we're creating different reels for the next shows. And I am leaving actually for my honeymoon. This is my last thing of the day.
yeah, congrats. Oh my gosh.
Uh, and so like I've been for the last 2 weeks doing a little crunch time marketing to because part of it is getting social media stuff out there so that for the next 2 weeks I'm off and I'm really taking off. But so I was doing some of that discussion and then, well, and here's an example of another part of my day. I interviewed and it'd be good to span it a little bit across a week. So yesterday I went to Networking Noms, which is a local therapist networking group that I go pretty regularly to. I have about 2 or 3 networking groups that I do attend, one in therapist and one out of therapist, because it's really important if you're going to run a business to not stay in our field. Therapists don't know a lot about running businesses. And so I learned that early on, that I needed to be networking at like local chambers of commerce as I started like cheap and small because I didn't have a lot of money in the beginning of my business. So it would be local, like different networking groups that you could just go for lunch, but that's all you were paying for, or coffee, right? But then I eventually graduated to chambers of commerces. And then now my networking is more specific to the skill or niche I'm trying to develop. Like I'm with the National Speaker Association St. Louis chapter because I really want to build my speaking career. I've spoken the entire time, but I want to know the business of speaking. And so that's an example of one of those different niche networking groups I'm doing now. And then, so it can involve networking, it can involve progress notes. That's the one part of my life that I could just live without. I mean, you see clients, there's progress notes. And then a portion of the business side of it has been researching and learning as much as I can about different social media platforms. Like right now, I have a personal goal of I really do deep dives into one social media platform each month. So last month was YouTube, where I just go in and I have if you haven't learned it or figured it out yet, I have a touch of the ADHD with hyperactivity. which involves hyperfocus, which is a very great skill for business, by the way. And so, like last month's hyperfocus was on YouTube. And when I say hyperfocus, like I watched people who have million views and I looked at like what are the details of their content and what are they doing for their titles and their thumbs, right? Like so that was last month. This month has been Instagram and well, no, okay. 2 months ago was Instagram when I was ASECT, and this month I think has actually been more Facebook because I've been playing a little bit with their in-app features and how do you play with the videos and because like part of what I've learned now, so that's me. Sorry, I'm geeking out because I really love this job.
Yeah.
But basically, part of the business is learning to geek out on business and technology now, because that's part of, I think, what runs a business and keeps the business running successfully from my side. And then there was another question there, which is what's making money?
Yeah, so essentially like the ROI. So like if do you feel like it was like an absolute necessity in your business? Like would you recommend if somebody else were to go into like private practice that they dive as deeply as you have into maybe that content creation piece?
I would say it is not for everyone. When I was, so I took a little break from the podcasting business for about 2 years and I was just an interviewee on other people's podcasts. But in the meantime, I was observing like that hyper focus hawk that I am to see what are people doing in the podcasting world to improve their ability to run podcasts. But I think it's easier if you pick one thing and do it well. So if you like only join a podcast and do a podcast if you're passionate about podcasting and you love this because it's a lot of work. I think you do need to do one thing well, like one social media. Like there are some people who are like TikTok's their thing and they're doing a great job on TikTok. You know what? You can just do TikTok and focus on that. Or there's some people who are just on Instagram and doing like the reels and like have a social media person. If this stuff sounds like the worst thing ever, then hire somebody. But you do have to have some way of getting yourself out there because we are in what's called an attention economy. Have you guys talked about that at all or learned of that?
Yep.
You haven't talked about it, but it obviously it resonates.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically everybody's competing for your attention right now. And so you don't have to be everywhere, but you do need to have some way to gather people's attention. And so I think for therapists, I actually just spoke about this at ASECT. I basically said, even if you just do one platform really well, but you get really good at it, that's enough to put yourself out there. Or like even if it's a website with like Google and like doing a really good job of putting that kind of content out there. And it doesn't have to be video content. It could be writing. It could be like I tweet once a day. It could be like pictures for the whole carousel thing. People have these pictures of just inspirational quotes that like slide through. So I don't think you as a therapist need to do everything, but you do need to like pay attention to analytics. So where geeking out and technology is important is what you were talking about, ROI. And like, okay, is this actually giving me any dollar amount for what I'm doing? And if it's not, then how do I pivot and learn and evolve?
Dr. Keener, any thoughts?
Well, I guess there's so many questions there. I'm having I'm on sabbatical next semester. We're talking about AI, so I'm sort of have that on my brain. So, have you harnessed AI to help you with content creation? And again, is there any sort of tips that you would want to share with anybody?
Yes. So I'm using ChatGPT because I put content everywhere, and that would be a lot of work and cause burnout without ChatGPT. So I want you to know I'm not writing everything. I put in an idea for like I have these videos. So I will say the ideas I come up with for my videos. I'm like, I want to do this, this, and this because I just have this brain that's like, I have a bed. I'm going to do all kinds of crazy things on the bed. I have a kitchen. Here's what I can do. Like so that's a cool harnessing brain tactic I already have. But what I will do is I will go into ChatGPT and I'll say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm going to put this video on YouTube. What's a good search engine optimized title for YouTube for this video? Here's what's involved. And also, can you give me the description for the content? And so then it creates something. And then I have different titles to choose from, and I pick the one that resonates with me. But like they're creating my titles that are better for YouTube, and they create content. But I like what I'll do is I'll say, what, that wasn't funny enough, ChatGPT. I'm more goofy than that. Go further. It one of them. I literally did this while I'm speaking for a group on desire discrepancy. and we were coming up with titles and content. And the first one, I was like, that's boring. And then I did a second one, I was like, still boring. By the third one, it was hilarious. And I was like, okay, here. And I just copied and pasted, sent that to the person as we're working on creating the objectives. And so I am using it to enhance what I'm doing. Like the marketing, I would say it has been used, I've been using it a lot for marketing and like how you want the words to look on social media. Cause that's something like, here's something cool, guys. Before this, you just had to guess. Like, I was just like, hopefully this does something. And I do have good ideas, but not all of my ideas matter to you or to somebody else, right? And now with ChatGPT, I can be like, here's my idea, but how can I vamp this up or how can I write it in a way that people will actually listen and pay attention? And here's something cool I learned from my YouTube analytics. So 30% of my viewers are coming from ChatGPT research, like somebody going on ChatGPT
Whoa.
and then like they're coming to me. And what's cool is I'm also using ChatGPT to create my descriptions. So it's becoming its own like circle, which is super cool.
Yeah, yeah, technology. I'm going a little bit of a different direction. I guess like where you're at now, because you kind of mentioned and you kind of touched on this earlier, how just you're always learning, you're always adapting. It's always that. Like, what would you say today is a skill that you're still kind of feeling like you're having a challenge with, or that you feel like you're still trying to grow right now, just like as a business owner or a therapist or a sex therapist?
That's a great question. And it speaks to a question you asked earlier, which is what am I doing with my day, right? I really want to move fully into content creation. I'm out of therapy at some point. I'm not there yet. And so the skill I'm learning is gathering sponsorship and communicating in a way to describe the value of the content to a potential buyer, right? So one of the things my show does is we go on site and we do like a behind the scenes at your site. So it goes on my show. So here's an example. So I'm going to work hopefully it's like this is what I'm learning how to do is sell in a new way. But like I think one of the things that is challenging for people is I don't think people are ready yet to really embrace content creation. Like I think people there's a little old school way of like, well, we always did it this way. And so there's a little bit of like fear, not understanding what's going on. And so some of it is like in the networking. Like, so I will still say my biggest ROI has been throughout my business networking because I learned from real communication of like what lands, what doesn't land, why does it work, when does it work, right? But so I'm going to speak with this pelvic floor physical therapist, and the goal is to go on site to different places to then incorporate intimacy with their thing, right? So, like, intimacy with cancer is one I want to do, intimacy with pelvic floor physical therapy. And so, this on site thing is kind of like it's similar to hiring a videographer, like for a wedding, but you're doing this for a company to create meaningful and valuable content that then goes on my show, but they have access to and can use on their social media sites as well. So the new skill is one, how do you help people understand the value of content creation? But then two, how do you sell it in a way that like people can actually will want to do it? They'll feel the value for it. They can improve their own businesses in that practice. And so I'm learning how to have those conversations and those negotiations. I'm learning to negotiate for sponsorship deals and like what is a reasonable sponsorship deal? I don't know. Like I've never learned this before. Um, but ultimately because I want to be fully in content creation and eventually not do therapy as much. That doesn't mean I don't care about therapy. I just have this bigger goal of changing the sexual landscape. And I believe the way to do that is through powerful, engaging sexual content creation, but then combining it with like everyday things like the cancer group or like a doctor's office or a kitchen. Like I want to go into someone's actual restaurant and like do one of these behind the scenes, like here's what it looks like and here's how you can make your date romantic. Like, because it's different when you're there and you're showing in action. Here's how intimacy can be a part of your everyday life. So that's the skill I'm learning. And I will say there's been some growing pains.
It's learning.
I feel like I just, so you're like, I don't, what do we,
No, yeah.
Yeah, I just soak it in. I soak it all in because I do have so many more questions, right? Because you share this, and I'm like, I keep coming back to. I mean, it sounds a little too on the nose because we're mentor moments, but the business side of it and the content creation side of it is, I mean, I feel like I would have to have somebody to model off of, or somebody to at least show me the ropes of like, because you just said sponsorship deals, I wouldn't have the first clue, and so I mean, maybe it's just a lot of authenticity of just, like, coming into it and just, like, maybe really leaning into the, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing," kind of piece of it, but I anybody on the business end that has been a really big, like, mentor for you of like, "Ah, okay, I'm learning from maybe this business or from this maybe practice," or, I don't know.
I feel like I'm in a deep ocean. I feel like I'm in a blue ocean. I'm learning and I'm paving the way as I go. But the value in business of being in a blue ocean is you're the only one there, right? And so, like, I am literally the only sex therapist in most rooms. I'm also the only one doing this crazy content. So, like, a lot of it is I'm figuring it out as I go. But to your point, it would be nice. It would be nice to have a motto. What I have is a good deal of risk tolerance, and I've
That's
felt it across time. And to give kind of like a little guidance for business owners or entrepreneurials to be really what you need to be successful in business is a level of risk tolerance and resilience, the ability to try things out and learn, but not like beat the crap out of yourself because you made a mistake. Because I do make mistakes. I don't always say the right thing. I don't always like I am the perpetual foot and mouth syndrome person. It goes great with media content, but like not always with therapy. Actually, the verse I learned was like, "Oh wow, you shouldn't say it like that, Angela. People don't like it when you're that blunt." I've had to learn that over time. Um, but I just think, I have a really kind way I treat myself through his tolerance of like, "Hey, okay, it's okay to not know what you're doing." I I was just last night telling my husband as we were falling asleep, he's like, "Hey, you seem antsy," and I was like, "I feel like I should track how many times I sit in self-doubt." Like, I feel like I need to start writing that down for myself because, and how closely they're linked with having a rough session. Because I had, like, 2 rough sessions yesterday at the end of the night, and, like, usually if I've had a rough session, I'm very careful not to make any business decisions. Like, my producer was asking me something, I was like, "Don't say a word, Angela, just let the night pass." Because, like, I think self-doubt is a huge part of this work as a business owner, and it's risk tolerance. I'm out in the the deepest, bluest ocean. I don't even know when land's coming, but you know what? There's a lot of fish and I'm eating, so it's working out. No? But I don't know that I have a lot of mentors. However, I do have a lot of really great colleagues that are always willing to talk to me and brainstorm when I'm like, I don't know how to do this. What do you think? And I'm not alone. So I do want to put that out there. I'm never alone. I have a lot of people that are supporting me and really care about what I'm doing. And I just don't think that any of us really knows what we're doing. One that like big scheme of things. Does that make sense?
very authentic, and that's what I appreciate the most is like, yeah, I yeah, I agree with that. Dr. King, I've only got one more question, but we can save it towards the end if you've got something on your.
Well, no, I just thought that really led well into our last segment. So why don't you ask your last
Sure.
question and then we can.
Yeah, so, being transparent on my end, I'm just now stepping into private practice myself. And one thing that I have been struggling with and I've heard other, therapists struggle with is a lot of fear around going into a niche, a lot of fear about, oh, I don't want to just be the therapist about this. Like, what if that keeps me from a larger clientele? Or what if that pigeonholes me somehow? Or what if I change my mind and I don't want to be just this therapist? And being, that you're a clinician that is in a niche area, like what would you say to those therapists, maybe even me included, of like that fear around, "Ooh, I don't want to, I'm afraid of limiting myself somehow by going into a very, I don't want to keep saying niche, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just marketing. Like therapists don't get a lot of training in marketing. So let me just explain it from a marketing perspective. Um, if you're too broad, nobody knows who you are. They don't even notice you, right? So I would like you to niche yourself down to 5 words or less. Like, how can you describe who you are and what you do in 5 words or less? I open bedroom doors. That's me, right? That's my tagline. And then everything stems from that. I have like a positioning statement that's longer. Then I have a broader, like, I'm a sex and marriage therapist. But like, it's an attention economy, which means you like niching down is cutting through that red tape and setting yourself apart. But it's just branding, right? Like I still work with business owners and in finance and in parenting. Like in the broader sense, I still work with anything a couple fights about, like anything. Right.
That's
But
yeah.
they know me as I open bedroom doors. She's the oh, she's the neighborhood sex therapist because I even, Mr. Rogers of sex therapy, of course, right here. But you remember that, right? Like you're like, oh, that's memorable. So the niching is just a marketing branding scheme. But no, you won't niche yourself down. You're the only one who limits yourself. That's something I learned early on is that like the only person who holds me back is me. And so I used to think, oh, I'm a sex therapist. I can't do this because I'm a sex therapist and this. And like it was all in my head. And I want all the therapists here. It's all in your head. The great skill that you have to like do therapy of like being in your head and overthinking stuff, it's great for therapy, but it's terrible for marketing. Get out of your head. Like, what do people notice? What makes people interested in you? That's what niching is about. And so, but like, no, people come see me for all kinds of things. And now, like, I was holding myself back thinking, well, because I'm a sex therapist, like for content, I could only get like those really like intense or like, I don't know, like your BDSM types, which I'm not anti BDSM. I'm just saying, like it has to be those really fringe sexual things. And I'm like, no, like I'm literally at NSA talking about like somebody comes and I'm like, oh, I could see how this impacts intimacy this way. And people just love it. They're just like, that's so cool that there's a sex therapist in a business setting. Right. And so you would only hold yourself back by what you're saying to yourself. And that is going back to that resilience stuff that I want to like really drive home is that business ownership is about risk tolerance, trying stuff. Okay, it's scary. I've never done this before, but I'm going to jump in and see what happens. Followed with a lot of kindness to yourself. Like, hey, yeah, what did I learn? What worked well? What didn't? What can I do better next time? As opposed to like, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? Like, that would be negative and not resilience building. And all of us are learning. Nobody knows exactly what they're doing. So even like I remember one of my first self-compassion statements was it's okay to not know things, Angela. It's okay to not know the answer here. Like who can you ask for help? Who can you talk to? And for like the whole mentor thing, I do want to go back to it. I feel like it depends on the topic, but like I have financial mentors, I have marketing mentors, I have people who are more business. I have podcast mentors. Like, I feel like my mentors are really like, it's like I piecemeal it. Right.
Kitchen cabinet, yeah.
Yeah.
A kitchen cabinet.
Yeah. Like, I have a person when I needed to update my CRM and put all my forms online, I reached out to April, who's really good at streamlining resources. So it's like, oh, wait, she's my that person. But like, she isn't just great for like my podcast producer would be somebody I'd talk to about the sales and the sponsorship stuff. But honestly, he's not that perfect at it either. I think he's got some old world models going on as well. And so sometimes I even just talk to friends who are salespeople. Like, what do you know? Right. And so that's why, again, my biggest ROI is networking. Like, I've gotten to a point with networking that even if I don't know somebody, I can ask somebody and find somebody to get what I'm looking for in terms of help or figuring things out. Go for it.
Angela, I mean, this has been such an insightful podcast. I'm so thankful that you joined us. We wrap up each episode with our guests giving a mentor moment, and I really feel like we've had like an hour full of them because like everything you have had these great nuggets. So whether it's reinforcing something like the risk tolerance or trusting yourself, or is there another nugget that you want to leave us? What is that mentor moment that you have for our guests?
I mean, I guess always keep learning. Like, anytime you find yourself getting too much in a bubble, find a way to pop it. I learned that early on. Like, don't stay in your bubble. Like, you need to get out of it. And if you find yourself saying, I can't do that, or that's just not me. That's an example of you being in your bubble. You need to like pop that shit as quick as possible because you can't grow staying like that, right? Like, I can't, I don't, it's fear, own it, honor it, and move on.
Angela Skurtu is a licensed marriage therapist, certified sex therapist, She's also the host of the Open Bedrooms Door show, Real Talk with Real Relationships, available on her YouTube channel, and we'll have that linked in the description of this episode as well. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. I've just been smiling this whole time because everything that you said has just been like, it's been great. I really appreciate it.